How many members of the Titanus Kong do we actually know about, and what happened to Kong's parents? In the Monsterverse, we know that Kong have reigned supreme over the domain of the Hollow Earth for eons now, and as of the new trailer for the new Empire, it seems that they are still one of the dominant factions of the Titans. Where the Gojira's numbers have dwindled down to just one known survivor, the Kong still have a colony of agents operating in the shadows. So how many named Kong do we currently know about? Well, today, Heralds of the Titans, let's discuss some of the most prominent members of the species that we happen to know a bit of history about, as well as what occurred to Kong's own parents. Let's begin with our Kong, who was believed to be the last of his kind until very recently. We know that Kong lived out much of his life on Skull Island, and when Skull Island was formed, a group of Titanus Kong made their way to the surface world through an access burrow to the Hollow Earth. Based on the tie-in comic line Skull Island, The Birth of Kong, we know that Kong was born long after the pilgrimage was made, and was actually born on Skull Island, being one of the first. It seems he didn't venture away from his island until Monarch got involved though. But since Kong has been one of two leads of the Monsterverse, we won't be spending too much time covering his history. We do know a bit about Kong's parents though, thanks to the aforementioned prequel series showcasing Kong's origin, and some of the extended material that is not officially canon to the Monsterverse. King Kong's father is depicted as a grizzled, battle-worn ape who lost an eye at some point before Kong was old enough to remember. In the mainline Monsterverse though, we know that Kong's parents were once part of a larger colony that made the trek to Skull Island, but quickly came into contact with the Skull Crawlers who followed them from within the Hollow Earth. For years, these two factions battled for dominance over Skull Island, and the Kong slowly began to die out until Kong's parents were the only two left. Although the Kongs were superior fighters, they simply could not reproduce at the rate that the Skull Crawlers could. Although we don't have an official name for either of these two members of the species, we do know that they delivered Kong while under siege by the Skull Crawlers, and Kong's mother was able to slip away just long enough to stow Kong in a cave before returning to the fight herself, attempting to save her mate. Kong remained hidden until the battle subsided, only to emerge from the cave to find the fallen remains of his two parents. The site of this grand battle became known as the Valley of the Fallen Gods, and the skeletons of Kong's parents remain on full display as a consistent memory of Kong's first day on this planet. From this point forward, Kong was believed to be the last of his kind, and he spent his days drifting Skull Island, remaining dominant as king, and fighting against the very Skull Crawlers who claimed the lives of his parents. What's interesting to note about this is that by the time Kong's parents died, the Iwi had already arrived on Skull Island, and the distant ancestors of the tribe actually witnessed this encounter, showing that the Iwi of Skull Island are as old or older than Kong himself is. With the trailers for the new Empire though, we learn that Kong is not in fact the last of his people, and that there is a whole tribe of survivors within the Hollow Earth and an offshoot of Kong. While we don't know each of these survivors by name, there do seem to be two particular standouts that are worth mentioning. The first and most obvious is the beast simply known as the Scar King, who seems to be the new alpha among this Hollow Earth colony. He sports a much lengthier appearance, but is still just as formidable if not more so in combat, and he seems to go toe-to-toe with Kong in the latest trailers. One important detail regarding Kong is that they have the capability to craft and use weaponry, showing that they do have a sense of tactical know-how that aren't strictly reliant on brute force alone. The Scar King in particular seems to have an affinity for his whiplash, and might be much more thoroughly trained and battle-hardened than Kong is. We don't see much evidence of Kong using weaponry during his time on Skull Island, and it's only after his first encounter with Godzilla that he discovers the plate axe, meaning that the Scar King will have been using weaponry for far longer than Kong, giving him a major advantage. If this is the case, then the Scar King's smarts might be a match for Kong's physical superiority, and the rest of the colony seems to agree with this, as it appears as if the Scar King is subjugating them using Titanus Shimo. So far we can tell, they seem to follow his orders willingly, showing excitement and energy for their upcoming war with the surface world. This doesn't mean that all of his subjects are willing participants of this war though, and we also have reason to believe that the Scar King has some telepathic and even hypnotic abilities if he is accessing a crystal which can also be found in the Scar King's possession, which of course we see during the trailer. One theory is that the beast known as Shimo is under the direct control of the Scar King, Not only do Shimo's eyes glow the same color, but we already have evidence that the Titans are able to create these sort of mental links with one another, though exactly how much autonomy she has over her own actions versus how much the Scar King controls is unknown right now. For a full breakdown on how mind control may be a possibility in the Monsterverse though, be sure to check out our video on how exactly the Scar King is controlling Shimo. Overall though, it seems as though there is a reason why Scar King is set to be as formidable as he is. And he could also point to the fact why Kong's parents eventually fled the Hollow Earth and found their way to Skull Island. Perhaps they are the survivors of an offshoot clan or a war following their battle with the Scar King, with Kong being the last of his lineage, but still more Kongs present. But now, we have one more member of the Kong species that we need to explore. The child member of Titanus Kong that we see in the trailers for the new Empire is named Zuko, and based on his coloration and his build, it's likely that he has some relation to the Scar King. Though we don't know this for sure, but we do know that Zuko will align with Kong instead of the Scar King, likely being imprisoned and subjugated by the power of the Scar King, who seeks to establish a new empire, not only within the Hollow Earth, but the entire planet using Titanus Shimo. It's also possible that the Scar King could have been the one that have driven Kong's parents out of the Hollow Earth, establishing himself as the new king. If Zuko is opposed to the Scar King and knows what he is planning, then it might make for a compelling middle ground, as both sides have the best interest of the child at heart if the Scar King is in fact the father or even grandfather of Zuko, essentially making him next in line to receive the throne. Although this is the extent of the canon Kongs in the Monsterverse, there are extended non-canon projects that have a various amount of Kongs held within them, some of which that belong to separate universes, but are nonetheless very interesting. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of these Kong? Do you think these are the most well-known members of the Titanus Kong? And what are your thoughts on what occurred with Kong's parents, the Skullcrawlers, and how they originally came from the Hollow Earth? The big question now is, why did Kong's parents ultimately choose to flee the Hollow Earth? Were they in direct opposition of the Scar King? And is there something else going on here that would pose Kong as the greatest threat to the Scar King's rule? Who else do you think will play a major part in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire? And who is the rightful king of the Hollow Earth and the protectors of humanity? Thank you so much as always, my friends, for visiting the channel today. Hit that subscribe button, and I hope you're having an amazing one.